This is John Kander, and I'm playing the role of young John Kander. I'll be dancing around him over the course of the night. Approaching this conversation, well, I'll let them in on the little secret, which is that this is not a historic conversation. That John and I...
We're going to have a historic conversation. We decided on that.
Yeah, exactly. But we have been having lunches together ever since John came to see In the Heights off Broadway, so we have a few of these conversations every year. And what struck me most the first time we had lunch was all you wanted to do was talk about music. And so that's what I want to talk about. I want to pretend we're having lunch and we're having French onion soup, and we're going to talk music. So, talk to me about the visit.
Well, we could start our usual. Never mind. The visit, music for the visit, oddly enough. Is this on? When we started work on this piece, or when we were deciding whether or not to do it, it suddenly struck us that a story about an impoverished town and the richest woman in the world was coming to visit them, and the desire to keep that money in their town by marrying him off to this rich lady is The Merry Widow. And Dermot must have known that. And it was our feeling that he took The Merry Widow and stood it on its ear and turned it into the most vicious piece of satire that any country has probably ever had to endure by one of its citizens. Once that idea came to us, it seemed to me then if it's The Merry Widow, it's got to be full of waltzes. It's got to be an operetta. And the very first thing we wrote was a waltz called You, 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 which kind of goes through the score. And the form of it, the form of the whole piece really turned out to be a kind of operetta form, and is Viennese in its soul. And that's all I can tell you about the music.
Well, I don't think the Viennese ever wrote a lyric like, I'll take your coffin to Capri.
No, that's true.
And that's what I love so much about your music from Cabaret on down the line. You will give us the most beautiful Viennese waltz while the lyric is stepping on our throats.
That was something that Fred and I took great delight in. I don't mean it to be so self-conscious, but there was something kind of wonderful about combining elements and putting them together in a way that you don't quite expect. I think there are a lot of favorite Fred Ebb lines in this piece, but I think a couplet in Yellow Shoes where he says, people find themselves the elite are people who take good care of their feet. And it's to the jauntiest little tune, simple-minded little tune you can imagine. But all the way through it is this sort of nasty, greedy expression. And people all the way through the piece are saying one thing to music that says something else.
Yeah, and it's tremendous. And that Yellow Shoes, I mean, it is, to me, it's Tomorrow Belongs to Me on steroids. It is the most lovely, jaunty melody, and then they don't let up. And then they don't let up, and the music intensifies under, you know what I'm talking about. And it's so wonderful, and it's so scary, and you know, one by one to a person, they're going to give in to this impulse.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That little moment, as a matter of fact, David Loud, our musical director, and my musical conscience did the arrangement for Yellow Shoes, and there's a moment in which they're all circled in back of us, and Anton is explaining, this isn't going to work once he leaves town. and they better think what they're doing is what you say. And there's a little pause, and all of a sudden the chorus sings in unison. People. And they're just as happy as they could be, and blind to what's going on around them.
You have one of my favorite quotes ever about the writing process. I don't think I've ever even told you this, but my wife and I went up to stay at your house one weekend, and you were working on Scottsboro Boys at the time. You went away for the morning, and we were kind of on our own for breakfast, and you went to your little writing hut where you write upstate. He comes out and he goes, "My conscience is clear." And that meant you had gotten your writing done for the day. You had finished the verse or the couplet you were working on. You went like, and I still say that all the time. Anytime my wife asks how things are going, if I finished the couplet I'm working on, I go, "My conscience is clear."
It's true.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about deadlines and how you write and what's the thing that gets you to the finish line? Because this marks the third show that you were trying to get up, and it's up, and it's glorious.
Isn't that weird? If I have a writing pattern, I guess it's because I'm really, really guilty for being really, really lazy. And
It's true of all musical theater writers.
not you.
Oh, certainly me.
When?
Constantly. I need a deadline or I don't finish it.
Deadlines are good, and maybe guilt is good too, but Fred has a number of word behind stage here now referred to me as the laziest man he had ever met. But anyway, if you start out and sort of allow yourself, sort of have a goal, you have to finish this much today. If you do that and leave a little extra left over so you know where you're going the next day, then you can stop and say, okay, let's live.
Yeah, I've got my head around it now. I can go to sleep.
When is your writing time best?
Morning. I have to write in the morning. I degenerate over the course of the day. I may stop saying sentences in the middle of this conversation. But I have to do it in the morning, and having a dog has intensified that, because now the morning walk is when all the good stuff happens. And
What about Sebastian?
Sebastian is my son. He's 6 months old. He is, he was born 2 weeks before rehearsal at Hamilton started, so I haven't slept in 6 months. He did help me with one key moment in my show, which was there's a final moment leading up to Hamilton's duel. It was the last thing again, laziest man. I hadn't written it. It was New Year's Day. We were starting previews in a couple of weeks. And I hadn't written what Hamilton says before he gets shot, which is a little important. The whole show's been leading to it. And I tried lots of different musical moments. And Tommy Kail, he is the closest thing I have to a Fred Ebb, in that he's the one who holds me accountable and says, bring in something, and is smarter than me, so I keep him around. He said, I feel like you're going to write it on New Year's Day. He said that, I think, a week before Christmas. You're going to write it on New Year's Day. He just kind of called it and put it in my mind. And New Year's Day, the morning happened, and my son, who was at a month, was asleep on my chest. And my wife was asleep, and my dog was asleep, which never happens. And it was the quietest moment I think I've ever had in my life. And I went, well, that's the one thing I haven't done in the show. I haven't had a moment of quiet. It's been nonstop music, because I wrote the book, so it's all songs. And so I decided there's no music, and it's Hamilton's gonna just sort of spin out. And I walked my dog from my house to my parents' house, which is a good 30 blocks. And by the end of it, I had enough couplets that I could walk into my parents' house and say, my conscience is clear. I wrote the whole thing on New Year's Day.
Is there a moment in a piece that you're writing that you feel you will never get, not just the ending, but something which, when you go way past everything else and something's gnawing at you because what you've written there certainly what I've written there is really lousy, and then you don't know what to do about it.
Yeah, and I have the added misfortune of having to be on stage while it's being delivered.
That's a problem.
I have a line in Hamilton that I will not mention because it will be different by the time you see it on Broadway. But it is a line that got an unintentional laugh about half the time. And it's my fault. It wasn't the actor who was delivering its fault. It's because I set it up so that it sounds like a punchline. And I'm on stage when it happens, and every time the laugh came, a unicorn died, and my soul died, and I had to stand there and be in the scene. The other thing that happens to me is anytime someone messes up, and this used to happen to me all the time in the Heights, Robin DeJesus, who you had in your Mufti production of Zorba, who you know very well, anytime the band messed up or an actor messed up, Robin would turn to me and go, "Papa, they think you wrote that." That's pretty mean.
It's funny, there are moments in shows that you, even after they've been produced and maybe even revived so long, that you think that moment is really a mistake. And every time you hear it or see it, it seems, how did I let that happen?
Well, they're never really done, are they? I mean, anytime
No.
you get a chance to make something a little bit better, you're going to try.
I think that's something which a lot of people who don't write don't understand. They will see a reconception of a piece or a revival of a piece, and then they'll start comparing it to what was there in the past, and certain things won't be there. And they always assume, I think, or at least mostly, that for the writer, he was bludgeoned into cutting that out, whereas the fact is, it's the writer who does the cutting.
Yeah, I mean, I think that theater is one of the last worlds in which the writer gets to say what stays and what goes. It's in our contracts, unlike in Hollywood. But there is that misconception, you know, we're going to Broadway now, and people look at me conspiratorial and say, "Don't let them make you change it. Don't let the man do it."
That's the phrase, actually. Don't let them.
Don't let them. Don't let. And we're the ones.
We're the them.
We're the them. It's the dirty secret. We're the them. You know, talk to me a little bit about this production. Cheetah has been working on this thing for 14. How long? I saw a reading. So I'll tell you guys my story with this. I saw a reading in 2007. When it was,
you only saw the first act.
and I only saw the first act because I was still in the show. And so my running joke with him is, please get the visit to Broadway so I can see how it ends. And I'm happy to see how it ends. And but you know, you've been working on it for a long time. So I'm sorry. I also wanted to ask, you know, without Fred around, what's the process like? Because I know you continue to work on the show.
Well, working backwards, the process is kind of, it ought to be harder, but I still feel like it's the two of us writing this piece, and anytime I have to do something where Fred is not physically present, I just assume that he's in the room telling me, "No, you can't do that." Or, "Okay, that's all right." And so he helps me all the time through this. We started this piece, I don't know what year our first workshop was, but Angela Lansbury did the reading, and then her husband became ill, and she had to withdraw, and then Cheetah Rivera, that's the girl I knew,
Chorus girl.
has been involved with it ever since, and she's, and we identify her with that role. She's grown and grown and grown, and it is, that performance to me is like the distilled essence of Cheetah. It's like everything she knows about theater is up there on this stage. I've said this a lot, but it really makes me happy to say it again. She's a famous dancer. She's famous for movement. And watching Cheetah stand still on this stage, and you can't take your eyes off her, is something that gives me enormous pleasure, and also tells me is something maybe reassuring about the fact that the longer you work, it's possible, the better understanding of your art you have. And,